Hey guys, welcome back to the Hear Me Roar pod. I am Tobi and my co-host is none other than the Kate Save, which you might know her from Shark Tank. She's also founder of BeFit Foods and picked up Telstra's Business of the Year award too. Kate?
Well, Tobi, you've got a super impressive CV, 25 years in global commercialisation experience, and you founded Creative Cubes, Australia's leading co-working space and real estate business.
All right, let's get on with the pod. Kate, it just keeps getting better. The next guest that we have coming on is Coach Joe. Coach Joe, for me, was actually more inspiration.
Yes.
He drew a lot of inspiration from me, but actually, I think the reverse is true. So I bumped into Joe at pitch night. He came to pitch for a spot. So at pitch night, if you don't know, we do a 12 months rent-free program. It's Shark Tank. And our give is 12 months rent-free to people that win. We have a bunch of sponsors that come in. They're the judges. It's all independent. There's no bias. And people show up and pitch their business. And it's not for me to say great business or shit business. It's the judge. It's in the hands of the judges. And by the way, even those guys don't get it right. What the opportunity is, it's a 3-minute pitch, throw to questions, some Q&A, and then you're out. And then the judges deliberate. While the judges are deliberating, there's a bit of a segment that says, hey, who would love to have pitched tonight? Put your hand up. A few people put their hands up. And what they don't know is they actually get on stage for 1 minute and pitch. And Joe, who's coming on the show next, showed up.
Amazing.
And he was amazing.
Yeah.
And he'll tell the story a little bit differently. He was like shitting his pants. He's like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen here. But actually what I saw was the opposite. I saw this confident guy that was really proud of who he was, proud of what he was doing. And I've been able to follow him and his community online. And I'm really excited to have him on the show after this segment.
Can't wait. I did go to one of the pitch nights at the East Melbourne launch and it was spectacularly good. And I think that having people roar, just get up there on stage and pitch, it was incredibly powerful.
Well,
Such
you
a
would
good
know
night.
as an ex-Shark Tanker.
Oh, yes. Yes, we got 1 minute apparently.
Okay.
2 hours and 45 minutes later, I was still on the stage. But you get told it's a 1 minute pitch, but
That's
nobody cuts you off.
That's it. So coming up after this break, we'll have Coach Joe on. Guys, you've seen me put out content for years. It all started with James Shadrack from Purpose Productions. We've filmed over 800 vlogs, several hundred different pieces of content that has helped me take my business to the next level. We use Purpose Productions for all the content, pods, vlogs, and storytelling that we produce. Check out purposeproductions.co to learn how James and his amazing team can help you scale your business and get your message out there.
So, Tobi, we've got Coach Joe here today. So, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Kate, Tobi. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, man. So before the break, Kate talked about East Melbourne.
Yes.
It happened in East Melbourne. So my recollection was this incredibly strong, beaming human being comes down from the grandstand and stands up on stage and pitches himself. But your version is a bit different to that.
Yeah, well, I just came to observe. I just saw the opportunity to come and see what you're doing. And I told my wife a couple of nights before, I said, let's go check this out. And wasn't expecting to step up. I have to tell the true story is that my wife actually elbowed me when the 1 minute MC image came up. She elbowed me and she said, hey, that's you. So I hesitated for a moment and then I missed the first round. So I waited for the second round and said, okay, if there's another opportunity, I'll step up. So I put my hand up and then it was like slow motion. I don't know if you had those moments where it's like slow motion, you're going like, what the heck am I doing here?
As you're walking towards the mic.
Walking towards the mic. It's one of those moments. And so I'm trying to gather my thoughts while I'm getting up there and figuring out what am I doing? And so, I just had this one thought. I went, I'm just going to introduce myself. This is such a great community. I'm inspired by it. And I thought, I was inspired by you and thought, what an opportunity for me to just introduce myself to a community that I'm already inspired by, and let's see what happens.
Incredible. I love that you put yourself out there like that and on the spot. And
I don't think he had a choice. I think his wife's elbow was so strong.
But you got to follow through. He didn't run out the door. He went to the stage. It's that follow through.
So E3 motivation.
Yes.
What you don't know is our first guest on our podcast when we first launched this show was Justin Cabani.
Yes.
Justin ran a company called Hard Hat. I was personal training as a personal trainer, whilst we were building Petloo in the background. So 80% of my income was 20% of my time being Petloo, and then I flipped it, right? And I was working, keeping the money coming through, paying my rents and stuff like that.
Through personal training.
Through personal training.
Me too. I did that to fund my first business. There we go.
And it dawned on me, this was, I think, just before Facebook launched. And this is going to be a minute. But it dawned on me that, hey, I wonder if I could take myself digital.
Yeah.
I wonder if I could motivate people from sending them a text message or a prompt to say, hey, eat well, da-da-da-da-da, or hey, do some log in and sort of keep accountability. And the business was called E-Motivator.
Wow.
And today I sit in front of you as E3 Motivation.
E3 Motivation, yes.
I nudged Juz when you first, I don't remember where it was. I think you've run an event here or something.
Right, yeah.
And it was something broadcast. And Juz tapped me. He's like, hey, did you ever trademark this?
Wow.
E3 Motivation and E-Motivator was my original. It never got out of the ground. Yeah. It became Corporate Lifestyle Solutions, and then it sort of dissolved and became Petloo for the next 10 years. But let's talk about E3 Motivation.
Yeah, well, it's pretty much packaging my 20 years of experience as a leader. They say some say I'm a jack of all trades, master of nothing, but what I have mastered is personal vision and execution. So I've packaged it all into E3. So it's my whole life experience in the package. So I've designed a framework to help executive leaders. And we live in a different lane, right? Almost a different world sometimes, and trying to keep ourselves together and keep our family and keep our marriage, keep our health and all that. So I've gathered it all. I actually started off as No Limits. It started off as No Limits in 2010, and then now I've rebranded it and put my face on it. The world's changed, right? You got to put your face on these things, and so now it's Coach Joe E3 Motivation. So the framework is designed to help leaders live healthy and have impact, right? We want to leave a legacy, and be healthy at the same time and love life, right? So that's it. I mean,
we're both leaders in our own right. You're a pastor as well, or a former pastor?
Yeah. So I still pastor, help out with my church, and this is my coaching business that I do on the side to help leaders. And I've actually started off as a pilot. I trained as a pilot when I was. Let's just take it back. I was inspired by my dad, who was in the New Zealand Air Force, and he was a pioneer. He left Fiji and he left school in Fiji at the age of 14, and he told his...
Are you Fijian?
I'm from Fiji originally.
Yes.
And he told his guidance counselor that he's going to be the best aircraft engineer in Fiji at the age of 14, which I believe he accomplished. Somehow landed in New Zealand in the Air Force base, and I was born on the Air Force base, so I was born in the aviation world. And I actually trained as a pilot in my initial years, and got myself a private pilot's license. And
I think it's important you have a pilot license if you're launching rockets.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. So we're ready. We're getting ready. Yeah. And so I was inspired by his life. And he was my coach. So the drive comes from him. And this is where we have a connection with, I lost my dad at the age of 16. But he left enough in me to I'm 47 now, got 2 sons. And now I'm passing on the same knowledge to my boys. And so it's been 20 plus years of the ups and downs, the detours, and I'm still standing today. So I've surpassed my dad, so I'm happy.
Yeah, I just did that. I'm 44 this year. My dad passed when he was 44. I was 16, much like you.
Yeah.
So I'm breaking through.
Yes.
Hence the reason why there's a meeting room in East Melbourne called Breakthrough.
There you go.
So how do you get people to lift that glass ceiling that they put on themselves? And I think particularly in the corporate world, often, as far as people can see, is the hierarchy on the org chart. They can't see beyond that. So how do you get them to lift that glass ceiling?
Yeah, we all have ceilings, right? I guess you have to reframe that ceiling. So, I think Tobi's heard me talk about moments, right? We all have those moments, and we're trying to turn moments into momentum, and then momentum becomes a movement. So, those ceilings, look, I've had many ceilings, we all had ceilings, but, it's how you face that wall, right?
Yes.
It's how you reframe that wall. So I talk a lot about turning pain into purpose. And so there's, those walls are designed to make us, right? We all know that in hindsight.
Yeah.
But when those walls turn up, you got to reframe it real quick. And the agile leader, the fast-paced leader who can think on their toes and get into that slow motion, going up to the stage to grab that mic moment and turn a ceiling into an opportunity. Yeah, there's a lot of self-regulation involved there. So you have to be able to self-regulate, read the room, and get yourself into a certain headspace, some airspace. Pilots use the airspace.
Yeah.
And so you got to get into the right headspace, airspace for you to make an executive decision in that moment, right?
That's super interesting. The analogy that my mind goes back to, I'm reading Jana Pittman's book. Okay. So Jana Pittman, former Olympian, and she went on SAS, the television show, and she said one of the scariest challenges, so she'd just given birth to her third child. I think her child was 5.5 months old, and she later has twins. She has 5 children now. She's sitting on the edge of this cliff that's 10 meters up, and they ask them to sit backwards and just fall backwards and trust in the process, that if they fall backwards straight and with conviction, without hesitation, they won't get hurt because their body will flip like a pin. And she said she's watching the people before her twist and turn and pull out halfway, and then they go in all sorts of ways. They belly flop. It would freaking hurt. Like, it's ice down there, icy cold and hard water. But her mindset from all of her training and her resilience and what she'd been through made her follow through and just go straight and drop like a pin. And I think putting yourself in those shoes and having that follow through, because you can commit and go, I'm going to jump off. And she said some people did. They literally just jumped. But the whole challenge was face backwards and fall backwards. Oh,
that's it, yeah.
How do you give someone that courage?
Yeah, you have to lean into the moment, right?
Yeah.
And you got to trust that moment was designed for you.
Ooh.
This guy's such a cool cat.
Yeah.
So,
like, I'm like I'm in that moment. I'm like trying to process, and he's like, yeah, you just got to lean in.
Yeah. Well, she said other people are thinking, I'm going to break my neck. I'm going to do this. And I'm like, yeah, all those thoughts could definitely go through your head. You're hanging off the edge of a cliff.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, like an abseiling, they tell you to lean back, right?
Yeah.
And it goes against the grain. But that's when you have to trust the moment and lean into it. Like, we both love basketball, and, when you're training someone in defense, and they feel the pressure, you can use that pressure to leverage off it.
Yes.
And you create a flow off that.
Yes.
So that's martial arts too, isn't
similar,
it?
Yeah, similar.
I know nothing about that, but yes.
The same analogy with leadership is like when you're leaning into pressure. Yeah.
Use that
You got to use that pressure to your advantage, right? And that's where the growth mindset comes from, right? So we all talk about the growth mindset in leadership, but how do you execute it under pressure? So.
And how do you find those moments to help someone learn and grow? Because they're obviously everywhere, but if people have a closed mind, they've never encountered these moments because they've got a closed mind.
We talked about it at the event, is that you have to have the right lens, right?
Yeah.
So photographers understand this really well. So they have to put on the right lens for the moment. So when you're in the moment, you have to have the right lens. So if you have the lens of fear or the lens of insecurity, you're not going to see the moment right.
Yeah.
So your vision is distorted.
Yeah.
So when you have the right lens on, you keep adjusting that lens, right? Because that's just how the brain works. The focal point of the brain, where you have to put the right thing in the
Optic nerve.
That's it.
Yeah.
It sends the signals, right? Because we're all scientists here. So So
Well, I am.
yeah, you are. Yeah, that's you.
One out of
you
three.
can correct me. So you can coach me. So yeah, when we put the right lens on, you'll see the moment for what it is.
Yeah, right.
And that's when you can step in confident. You know, you're not necessarily walking in blind. Only if you've got the wrong lens on. So yeah, we talked about putting the right lens on, making the adjustment until you get rid of the distortion. Then you can
the opportunities there
take the shot,
instead
right?
of the fear.
Yeah, for me, it's like mechanics. So, doing the same thing repetitively.
Muscle memory.
Yeah, and the audience might build up. So if we go back to the basketball analogy, the guys, like if we take the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, right? They just finished in the top 4. We got Josh King coming on the show later this month. But them playing scrimmages and practicing on simulations during training, when there's 10,000 people in the stadium, the mechanics haven't changed. There's just now 10,000 or 20,000 eyes or 10,000 pairs of sets of eyes on the event or on the moment. But actually, they've simulated that moment time and time again. So mechanically, they're conditioned.
That's right.
24-second shot clock.
Yes.
They can't run an offense that runs longer than that.
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't work. But the pressure and the stimulus of that environment is mechanics.
It's a moment.
It's a moment, but it's also, it's not something they haven't done before.
No.
And so to your point, Kate, I'm going to call you Coach Joe's coach.
Thank you.
To be in that moment, it's not about, like, for me, like, definitely frantic and a million things would pop through my mind, but it's like, hey, I've done this before. We did this 30 times last week in training. You hear Tony Robbins talk about Steph Curry, who's the greatest shooter of all time. He's hit 25,000, whatever, how many points, right? But actually, Steph has shot like 20 million shots and he's only made 2,500 3-pointers or something to that effect. I don't really know the true stat.
Yes.
So he's failed more than he's made.
Yeah.
Or failed more times than he's done well. But actually, the volume
the preparation
is so there.
Yeah.
And he's able to execute in the moment because it's mechanics. I've been here. I've done it before. In fact, I did it 300 times yesterday and 300 times before the day before that.
Yes.
And that challenge, so going back to SAS, what they say behind the scenes. So a friend of mine is a psychologist on there, and he's been on lots of back ends of TV shows. He's also been the military and secret forces, whatever they call that. And he said the challenges that they set them, and even in the military, are actually impossible. They're not meant to be able to be completed, but they're seeing how they can build someone to that level where they can't be beaten. Even if you can't beat the challenge, the human can't be beaten.
So when I go to the physio says, hey, in order for rehabilitation, you need to be doing this exercise 4 times a day.
Yes.
In the morning, 4 times When in actual fact, they only just want you to do it twice. But they're taking you further, knowing that if you fall short, you're still in a safe zone.
Yeah.
So is the military or the psychology there saying, hey,
Coach Joe, come on. How are we training them? How are we training people?
Well, we use resistance training to build muscle, right?
Yes.
You build capacity. So resistance training as a leader is hitting that wall and failing. Because for us, it's not. We reframe that failure as growth. Because every time I'm, physics, there's inertia, right? So when you're having resistance, that builds the resilience, but it also creates inertia because there's things growing on the inside of you.
Totally.
If you stay in the pocket, right?
Yeah.
But if you opt out, then you miss the resistance training.
Yeah.
So you have so internally you are creating energy through the resistance. So when my dad passed away at the age of 16, I didn't have the IQ, didn't have the EQ, didn't have the experience to reframe that moment. But in fact, that set me up for life.
Right.
Fully agree.
You'll
And
understand this?
so I've said to my mom, and I think I've said this to you, like I would do anything to have my dad back.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be who I am
Yes.
today. And I love who I am.
Yeah.
And I love everything about what's going on in my world. But none of that would be what it is
Yes.
if I didn't have that moment in time
Yes.
that I suffered a great loss.
Yes.
Dare I say, taking your words, reframe the lens
Yep.
and tried to positively rebound out of that experience into who I am today at 44 years of age, right?
Yes. Well, that created the tenacity in me. So now I'm able to pass that on to my boys.
Yep.
So
I'm now creating legacy of my pain, right? So I've reframed the pain into purpose.
That's right.
So now I see my sons just doing they're 16 and their mindset is ahead
Yeah.
from where I started off. Now I can see the legacy piece of my vision going, okay, there we go. I've created momentum out of my pain. So
Do people need to have pain to create momentum?
well, women understand this, the labor process.
Yeah.
So it's part of the process. I think because I coach a lot of men, we don't have that cycle in our body to process those rhythms.
But I think what you said before,
Yeah,
nailed it, right? In order to grow, if you're taking if you were doing bench press before, at least I think that's what you were doing.
yeah,
In order to grow,
yep,
you need to fail. And in order to fail, you need to go through a level of pain relative to the moment.
yeah,
But you have to go through a relative amount of pain to be able to create the callus,
Yes.
that's right. Yeah.
callus the mind.
Yeah.
You know, we hear
As a young man, I didn't have the protection around me because you know pain without protection, that causes trauma, right?
sure.
Yes.
But when you put the boundaries around it, so when I'm training my son, he had his first taste of lung pain. So he wanted to opt out of his first fitness test when at the age of maybe he was 12, maybe younger, 10. And I took him to a training and he wanted to opt out. I knew he was looking to me and said, Dad, get me out of here. This is,
My kids do the same.
Too hard.
I said, you're going to have to
Scary.
stay here, son.
Yeah.
But that one moment is just what set him up to today.
Wow.
So
100%.
if he hadn't processed that pain and stayed in it, but I gave him enough structure, gave him enough support for him to see his dad there.
Yeah, that safety net.
You still need that
You're still going
safety,
to love
right?
him no matter what happens. You've got that safety net to fall back to. That's so important.
I'm like that with my girls. Like
Yeah.
they will try and lure me in unbeknownst to them, but their actions are luring me in to sort of give them a break.
Soften up.
Yeah. And hey, I'm not the coach.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pay attention
Yeah.
and follow the instructions.
Yeah.
And because I won't give them an out, they're forced to stay. But it's not that they're stuck and I'm not forced, like in talking about sports or singing or dancing or whatever. I'm just here to spectate. Don't come to me with your problems.
Yeah.
You got to coach. I'm just a supporter for the next 20, 40 minutes, whatever the time allowance is on the game that we're playing.
That's right.
And because they don't have an out, they have to persevere through discomfort. Now they're not being brutalized. They're running court sprints or defensive drills or whatever, or singing.
Yes.
But there are moments in life where you have to keep going. And I love that analogy of labor because you commit. And if you commit without the drugs and without the epidural, I've done that twice. But I knew I had my husband there. He had his hand on my back. He was counting down. He could tell me when the contractions were coming because he was watching my heart rate. And he goes, it's coming up in 3, 2, 1. And I'm like, how do you know that? Oh my God. And but having that support person and having a coach is what gets you through. And I'm sure he was just as traumatized as I was through the whole experience. But it's that lens. And I think my reframe in labor literally was, if a cow can give birth, if a horse can give birth, and look at the freaking legs and the size of those things, how hard can this be? The body's meant to do it, just go with it. And very, very other women listening may think, it's not that easy. But I think I took myself to that place and I practice with meditation on the body's meant to do this, just let go, let go. And I literally let go and my body did the work, which is the weirdest thing to say for people that have had, people have all sorts of things go wrong during birth. I didn't, and I didn't opt for the drugs or the epidural, not trying to be a hero, but I had this mindset that, no, your body's meant to do this. Why would our body be created not to be able to do this? Just go with it. And it was that just breathing and go with it. But I think that fallback was having my husband there as that security blanket, that if I'm not going to be okay, you're still going to be here.
Yeah, so I think we've talked about this maybe on the show previously. Like, I am the bumpers on the bumper ball on the laneways for my kids, right?
Yeah.
So they can throw the ball down the alley. It doesn't matter how they throw it, where they throw it. It's never going to go in the gutter.
Yeah.
Because dad's there making sure you don't fall in.
Yes.
But eventually, they get the bumpers are going to go away.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you got to hit the ball.
Yeah.
Well, you got to throw the ball in an accurate way to hit the pins. And there will be some gutters, but hopefully they're not as bad.
Yeah. And
That's
that
right.
you have to keep going
You have
sometimes.
to keep going.
And I think that's the ultimate, isn't it? When you know that once you commit, doesn't matter what happens.
And by the way,
no
some
end.
of that, like, I'm just throwing myself back to COVID just a little bit. I know we're past it,
Yes.
but some people couldn't. Some
Get through
people
that,
some
could
people
they?
couldn't do
No.
it.
No.
Yeah. And we saw a lot of people jump
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
take their lives
Yeah.
because the pain, they couldn't tolerate the pain.
And
so
there
it's
was
not
no
for everyone.
end in sight.
There was
and
no
that's
end in sight.
the scary part.
isolation,
but,
right?
That's life, isn't it? You don't know when the end's coming a
Well,
lot of the
No.
time.
Jeff Harris, who both of you have had the fortune of being in the room with him, he used to call me every Sunday, Tobi, this will pass. Just keep going.
Yeah.
And without him in my ear,
Oh, there you go.
support.
like, yeah,
person.
I just wonder whether or not I would have had
voice in your
the
corner.
tenacity,
Yeah.
right, to keep going. So e3motivation.com.
.com, yeah.
Get
E3
Joe
motiva-
in your corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am going to link Joe's details in the description below. We'll find him on Instagram. We'll find him on LinkedIn. We'll get him his website. I think you're doing fantastic.
Thanks,
I
Toby.
am genuinely in awe. I get to sit in on your community a little bit when there's conversations going across on Instagram. I'm in awe of what you created here at Creative Cubes. I think it was your first group gathering. And I think that the world needs a Coach Joe.
Yeah,
And I'm
those
hoping that-
insights is really incredible. Just those little insights into lifting that little bit more, pushing that little bit harder, but having guardrails.
We've all got our stories to tell, right?
Yeah.
And so, we always go by the thought that, we've got our own fingerprint and our own eye print.
Yeah.
So, our story, to feel, I've heard a lot of these young professionals talking about this imposter syndrome. We didn't have that kind of language growing up, right? You just step into the room and you have a go. Have a go, mate. That's what I love about Australia, right? Just have a go, And
We're going to wrap there. We'll be back after this short break.
weareluna.co is a great place for you and your business to start off with phenomenal accounting and legal services. So if you're a startup or a scale-up looking for legal and finance support, or alternatively looking to raise capital, weareluna.co is where you need to be starting off.
Kate, that was Coach Joe.
I love it. It's really opened my mind to coaching and why everyone needs a coach. If you don't have a coach or you don't have someone in your corner, in your case, Jeff, my case, husband Christian, they're not patting you on the back and telling you you're doing a good job. How are you going to get through?
That's right. And I think support network is really, really important. If I can reflect a little bit, growing up, entrepreneur, my mom, my sisters, they never really understood. Yeah. And then you immerse yourself in an environment where people really do understand you.
Yes.
Helps you go to the next level. And that's not to dismiss my mum and my sisters and more recently my wife.
Yeah.
But they're not in this pool. They're in the other pool. They're in the family and friends pool. And they want the best for you.
Yeah.
But they can't help because they don't know.
And they're not, if you're not in that entrepreneurial mindset and you're not all in, then you don't understand you're committed to the end. Like nothing will stop you.
Much like your birth summary.
Absolutely. There's no stopping. Once you're committed, that's it.
That's it. So I reckon Coach Joe is a very, very important ingredient for all of our listeners out there. Again, I'll link his details in the description below and reach out to him. Super friendly human being and wants the best for humanity. But if you don't have it, you may not have those bumpers, dare I say, on the bowling lane when you're throwing your business up course,
Yeah,
and that could be problematic.
absolutely. So get a coach.
I think so. Well, don't just get a coach.
Coach Joe.
Coach Joe. All right, guys, that's a wrap.